free agent, Kyle Pitts, and others. And speaking of the Bengals, after a disappointing season in 2025, the team holds the 10th overall pick in the upcoming NFL Draft. They did not get much in the way of production from their first-round pick last year, Shamar Stewart, so I gave them Reuben Bain Jr., whose 9.5 sacks helped Miami to the national championship game and earned him ACC Defensive Player of the Year honors last season. This team has questions on offense, Mike, but they've got glaring issues on defense. What's the right play here at number 10 overall?
Yes, they can't go wrong. Look, they were 29th in defensive efficiency field, and this is an unusual dynamic because everything the Bengals need to do is they have to bring Joe Burrow into the conversation. And I'm not saying he needs to be the general manager, but what you don't want is Carson Palmer 2.0.
Every NFL offseason eventually leads to one of the most exciting events in football, the NFL Draft. In 2026, the draft will take place from April 23 to April 25 in Pittsburgh, where all 32 teams will gather to select the next generation of NFL talent. For fans, the draft represents hope. It is the moment when struggling teams believe they can finally turn things around, and successful teams try to add the final pieces needed to compete for a championship. The draft is also where future stars first enter the league.
Closer to the NFL draft. Let's start off with the 101. Obviously, the consensus, no doubt, unless something crazy happens and he gets abducted by aliens, is going to be Jeremiah Love. That is who you would be selecting if you had the 101. So if you were to trade the 101, what is Jeremiah Love worth in the market today? Well, I can show you our last two real startup drafts. These are real money leagues, by the way. You can see Jeremiah Love went at the 110, which is just absolutely bonkers, okay? The 10th most valuable asset in that startup draft. And then the one before that, Jeremiah Love went at the 201. So right now, I mean, and I'm seeing it. I'm looking at a lot of startup drafts doing this video. Jeremiah Love is valued as a back into the first, early second, 1-2 turn type of asset, okay? So if you don't draft Jeremiah Love and you trade this pick away, you need to get an absolute haul. An absolute haul.
Every year, players who dominated in college step onto the NFL stage, hoping to prove they belong among the best athletes in the world. Some rookies immediately become starters, others take time to develop, and a few eventually grow into superstars who shape the league for years. But predicting which players will succeed is never easy. Some top prospects become instant stars, while others struggle to adjust to the speed and complexity of the NFL. Meanwhile, players drafted later sometimes exceed all expectations and become franchise cornerstones. That unpredictability is part of what makes the draft so fascinating. Teams spend months scouting players, analyzing film, and conducting interviews in hopes of finding the perfect fit for their roster. A single pick can completely change the direction of a franchise.
You mentioned it. We've talked about him a lot on the pod, and just the one of the top honors you can give a player is just saying that they are just a good football player. Right. To me, that just kind of resonates. He can do everything. He can play outside. He can play in the slot. He's tough. He can enter the box and mix it up with defensive ends and linebackers. You can give him the ball on some fly sweeps and let him carry the ball. But my comp for him was Chris Godwin. And I don't think Chris Godwin gets enough love and credit for what he brings to that Tampa Bay Bucs offense. I think if you talk to people inside, obviously Mike Evans is Mike Evans, but if you talk to people inside that organization, they will tell you that their offense is firing on all cylinders when Chris Godwin is in there. And just for measurement sakes, because I'm always give you these measurements when I'm giving you my comps, because not only do the play styles match.
And in the 2026 NFL Draft, several teams will be searching for exactly that, the player who can transform their future and lead them toward championship contention. The order of the NFL Draft is designed to give struggling teams a chance to rebuild and improve their roster. Teams with the worst records from the previous season receive the earliest selections, giving them access to the top prospects in the draft class. In theory, this system helps maintain competitive balance across the league. For rebuilding franchises, the draft is often the most important opportunity to reshape their future. A team holding one of the first few picks usually has the chance to select an elite player, whether that is a quarterback, a dominant defensive pass rusher, or a game-changing wide receiver. Because of that, front offices spend months preparing for this moment.
Yeah, so I was just looking at him and just even going through my reports, and the first person that jumped off the tape to me was Kenneth Murray Jr., aka K9. Their body structures are the same, their play styles are the same, and just for comparison's sake, right? If you look at their measurables, Kenneth Murray, when he came out, he was 6'2", 241, with 32 3/4 arm, a 4'5", 240, and a 38 vert. The comparison side, Anthony Hill Jr., 6'2", 238, 32 3/8 arm, a 4'5", 140, and a 37-inch vertical. So not only are their play styles the same, but their size, their measurable matches up almost identical as well. So that was my first comp.
General managers evaluate hundreds of players, study their college performance, and attempt to project how their skills will translate to the professional level. They also consider team needs, coaching schemes, and long-term roster planning. Sometimes teams even trade up in the draft order, sacrificing future picks for the chance to select a player they believe can become a franchise cornerstone. Other teams might trade down to collect more selections and build depth across multiple positions. This strategy and decision-making process is what makes the draft so dramatic. A single decision on draft night can shape the trajectory of a team for years, and in some cases, it can even alter the balance of power across the entire NFL.
Let's start off with the 102. Current equivalent is Patrick Mahomes, and I know that seems absolutely crazy, but again, this is based off of real drafts, multiple real startup drafts from our community this entire offseason. People are always asking the question, the 102 or Patrick Mahomes? What am I going to spend that pick on? And it's not a clear set in stone thing for people, but my thing is, I know Patrick Mahomes is 30 years old. Do you really not think that Patrick Mahomes, one of the most, competitive guys we've ever seen, is not going to play until his late 30s, his 38, 39, 40th, age? I think that's the type of player that he is. He is that Tom Brady. He's coming off a 20.5 point per game season. How many years in a row have we seen that he's one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game? If you're playing Dynasty in a 2 to 3 year window, why the hell wouldn't you consider Patrick Mahomes in a Superflex league here?
Every NFL draft class features several players that generate enormous attention, but none receive more scrutiny than the quarterbacks. Quarterback is the most important position in football. A great quarterback can elevate an entire roster, while instability at the position can keep even talented teams from reaching their full potential. Because of that, teams constantly search for their next franchise signal caller. During the months leading up to the draft, analysts and scouts carefully evaluate the top quarterback prospects. They analyze arm strength, decision-making, leadership ability, mobility, and how well players perform under pressure. Even small details can become major talking points. A quarterback's throwing mechanics, ability to read defenses, and performance in big games are all studied extensively. Teams also conduct interviews and psychological evaluations to better understand how these players will handle the pressure of playing in the NFL. Some quarterbacks enter the draft as highly polished prospects who are expected to start immediately. Others are viewed as long-term projects who may need time to develop before reaching their potential. Regardless of their path, the expectations placed on young quarterbacks are enormous. Every franchise dreams of drafting the player who can lead them for the next decade, and every draft class creates new debates about which quarterback might eventually become the league's next superstar.
But Sonny Styles, man, I mean, he was probably the star of the combine. And probably if there's anybody that made themselves a ton of money just based off of the combine, it was Sonny Styles. So, I mean, you see it there on the screen, his measurements, 6'5", 244 pounds, 4'6", a 43.5-inch vert, 32 7/8 arm, 10 hand, 11-2 broad jump. He just lit it on fire. And so you talk about a guy that moved from safety down to linebacker, and as crazy as it sounds, he's still learning how to play linebacker, right? He was the green dot for 2 years. His first year, he wasn't comfortable doing it. Started settling into the role in year 2. So there's still growth for him there. The only person to comp him to.
Whenever a new group of quarterback prospects enters the NFL draft, comparisons quickly begin to emerge. Fans and analysts often search for players who remind them of the league's most dominant stars. In recent years, one name has become the ultimate benchmark: Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes transformed the quarterback position with his combination of arm strength, creativity, and ability to make plays from almost any situation. His success has changed how teams evaluate young quarterbacks. Instead of focusing only on traditional pocket passers, many teams now look for players with mobility, improvisational skills, and the ability to create explosive plays outside of the structure of the offense. That search for the next Mahomes has become a major storyline in every draft class. Of course, finding a quarterback who can truly replicate that level of impact is extremely rare. Mahomes is one of the most talented players the NFL has ever seen. Still, every few years, a prospect emerges with a similar skill set. A player capable of making deep throws, extending plays with athleticism, and leading an offense with confidence. If one of the quarterbacks in the 2026 NFL draft class develops into that kind of player, it could completely reshape the future of whichever team selects him. Because in today's NFL, landing an elite quarterback can instantly transform a franchise.
The bigger, more rugged guys. So things about guys like Denzel Boston, Cardell Tate, Malachi Fields from Notre Dame. But then if you're looking for the quicker sort of slot guys, Casey Concepcion, Zachariah Branch, they're going to be productive players as well. So it's deep, but it's varied in terms of skill sets that'll be available.
I'm declaring today, the 17th, the final day that we can play off the Valentine's theme. But let's do some matchmaking here, Mike, with some wide receiver needy teams and a player that might fit their needs. Let's begin with a team that you know very well, the New York Jets.
Yeah, we're going to go with Makai Lemon. And what I like about him is, and I'm saying this because they're in the same city, but he has a little Puka Nacua to me. Contested catches. And when you think about Garrett Wilson, whose speed, let's get some physicality with Garrett Wilson and go with Makai Lemon. I think they are absolutely a perfect tandem.
What a fun player to watch. Let's stay in New York with the Giants, the other team that calls MetLife Stadium home.
While quarterbacks often dominate the conversation during the NFL draft, they're far from the only players capable of becoming stars. Every draft class produces rookies who make an immediate impact across multiple positions. Elite pass rushers can disrupt opposing offenses from the moment they enter the league. Dynamic wide receivers can quickly become the focal point of an offense. Dominant offensive linemen can stabilize an entire unit and protect their quarterback. These types of players often become just as valuable as quarterbacks. In fact, many of the most exciting young stars in the NFL today were not quarterbacks when they entered the league. Instead, they were explosive athletes who possessed the physical tools and competitive mindset needed to succeed at the highest level. Identifying these players before the draft is a big challenge for scouts and analysts.
All right, let's go. This is the moment you've been waiting for. And I'm just saying that in the hopes that you're kind to me. Keldrick Falk, we talked to him, 21-year-old Keldrick Falk, it turns out. Great young man, fantastic football player, just scratching the surface. 6'5" and 7/8, 276 pounds, 34 and 3/8 inch arms. My comp, producer Sharon, this is the Florida Gator, Carlos Dunlap.
Let me think my way through. No. Let me think my way. So
let me give you the measurables for Carlos at the combine. 6'6", 278, 34 and 5/8 inch arms. He ran a 4.68. We haven't seen Keldrick run yet. 35-inch vert for Keldrick, and the vertical for Carlos was 31.5. So there you go.
College football does not always translate directly to the NFL. The speed of the professional game, the complexity of defensive schemes, and the physical demands of a longer season can all affect how rookies perform. However, every year a handful of players rise above those challenges. They adapt quickly to the league, earn starting roles early in their careers, and begin building the foundation for what could become outstanding NFL careers. The 2026 draft class will almost certainly produce several players capable of doing exactly that. While the first round usually gets the most attention, some of the best players in NFL history were not selected at the very top of the draft. In fact, every year the league discovers several hidden gems, players taken later in the draft who eventually develop into elite starters or even superstars. This happens because predicting how a player will perform in the NFL is extremely difficult. College football and the NFL are different environments. Some prospects who dominate in college struggle to adjust to the speed and complexity of professional defenses. At the same time, other players who were overlooked during the draft process suddenly thrive when they enter the right system. Coaching plays a huge role in this development. A player drafted into a team with strong coaching, good teammates, and a well-designed scheme may improve much more quickly than expected. Meanwhile, a highly drafted prospect who enters a poorly structured environment might struggle to reach their full potential. That's why scouting departments spend enormous time studying late-round prospects. They analyze film, evaluate athletic traits, and try to identify players who might have been overlooked by other teams. These are the prospects who can provide incredible value if they develop into productive starters. Every NFL draft eventually produces a few surprise stars. And when one of those late-round selections becomes a key player for a team, it often proves just as important as landing a top pick. The NFL draft doesn't just impact individual teams. Over time, it shapes the entire future of the league. Every new draft class introduces the next generation of stars who will define the NFL for years to come. These players eventually become the faces of franchises, the center of rivalries, and the athletes who create the most memorable moments in football. That process begins the moment they're drafted. Some players will quickly become starters and contribute immediately. Others may need time to develop before reaching their full potential. But by the end of the season, several rookies will likely emerge as major contributors to their teams. For franchises in rebuilding phases, the draft is especially critical. Landing the right player can accelerate a team's progress and help them return to playoff contention much faster than expected. One successful draft class can transform a roster, strengthen multiple positions, and establish the foundation for long-term success. Of course, the draft also carries risk. Not every highly ranked prospect becomes a star, and some teams will inevitably regret their selections. But that uncertainty is part of what makes the event so compelling.
When the 2026 NFL Draft begins, every team will believe they are about to select the player who could change their future. And in a few cases, they might be right.